Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a tale as twisted as that old comfy sweater you drag out on rainy nights. Picture yourself in a world where the morning air seems heavier. Each breath, a quiet echo of secrets whispered by candlelight the night before. You roll out of bed, or rather, out of your humble straw mattress, into an era when the term plague wasn't just the latest Netflix thriller, but a chilling reality that roamed the cobblestone streets just outside your door. But don't worry, you probably won't survive this. Oops. I mean, you probably will. Wink, wink. Before you get too comfy, feel free to tap like or subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying the calm around here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little journey reaches. Now, go ahead and lower the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background, and let's drift gently into tonight's story together. You wake up, and the world feels just a little off. Like when you try to check your phone, but it's stubbornly refusing to load anything beyond the lock screen. Outside, the town is eerily quiet, as if the earth is holding its breath, waiting. Pestilence. Such a quaint word for something that's deadlier than an unexpected Monday. Imagine stepping onto streets where merchant stalls stand empty, shadows of a bustling marketplace that's now only frequented by fleeting whispers of what used to be. Horses clip-clopping down the way, pulling wagons that aren't filled with goods, but burdens far heavier. See, back in medieval days, waking up to an empty market would be today's equivalent of logging into TikTok to find that all your favorite creators have simply vanished. Spooky, right? Every morning is a new layer of odd, like trying to put together a 1,000-piece puzzle with pieces from 5 different boxes. Who even knew life could feel like this? Oh, right. Every medieval person during the late 1340s. This wasn't about trying to keep up with the latest meme or stressfully scrolling through a trending political hashtag. Nope. This was a whole different ballgame. Surviving in an era where each day felt like a dark-tinged adventure. Back then, folks woke with the little light from their latticed windows, drank their ale, which was probably cleaner than some of their water, honestly, and set about their day, hoping to not lose a loved one to this invisible grim reaper slinking through town. You walk outside, inhaling the dewy morning air, weighted with more than just mist. The knowledge that Mary, from across the street, maybe she was the best baker in the village, wouldn't be setting up her stall anymore creeps up. She lost the fight to the great mortality, as they called it. It's strange, you know, how a word like mortality can start to lose meaning in the face of so much of it. Historians still argue whether the sensation of living through this time dulled people's sensitivity to death or heightened it, like watching too many crime documentaries until you find yourself side-eyeing that creaky door. So, you walk to the town center, not to scroll mindlessly, but perhaps to clasp hands with familiarity. You pass by narrow alleys, rub your eyes with disbelief, or perhaps hope it's just the sleep clinging on, and find solace in the routine of greeting others with a nod. Still here, those nods seem to say. You find yourself part of conversations thick with speculation. Think of it like the medieval version of reading wild Reddit theories. Anyway, here's the kicker. What people feared was so abstract, yet so immediate, that it became a thing of legends. Did it come from the wrath of God, a punishment for sins? Was it brought by the winds of demonic mischief, or just dumb luck to be living in such chaotic times? complete with a lack of modern medicine and misinformation, only as organized as the neighborhood gossip. One relied as much on daily routine for a sense of normalcy as we do on weather apps today, even when they lie. Oh, the simple joys of staring at clouds and wondering why they never match the forecast. There you have it, an awakening in a plague-stricken world, where each morning greets you with more empathy for those distant faces peeping grouchily over their porridge bowls, which, honestly, probably tasted like disappointment wrapped in desperation. Sure, life will keep moving, but you can't help but think, what's next? As you shuffle onward, cheeks brushed by dusty winds and streets crisscrossed with memories of those who once were, there's another thought. One we're definitely carrying into tomorrow, curious as to how this strange day will unfold. So, as you carry the weight of that eerie morning air on your shoulders, let's wander further into the winding alleys of medieval medicine. Keeping things just a little funky, imagine this. You stroll into a quaint little apothecary shop. Shelves lined with an assortment of vials sparkling in the amber light. It's got that Pinterest vibe, where everything is painstakingly arranged to look accidentally perfect. You're here not to snap a photo for Instagram, but to get a potion that's maybe just a touch dubious. Folk remedies back then. Oh boy, they were the Wild West of healthcare. A mix of logic, superstition, and creativity that could either save a life or just make you question your sanity. You might be sipping on a brew mixed with sage, thyme, garlic, and a hope that today's concoction is less likely to double as a potion for turning into a newt. Honestly, some of these remedies sound like medieval smoothie recipes that went drastically wrong. One quirky tidbit for you. Back in those days, people sometimes used ground unicorn horn, or what they thought was unicorn horn. And if you're thinking, wait, were there ever unicorns? Well, what they really had was narwhal tusks, or rhino horn, sold by traders with more bamboozle than Bezos. If there were unicorns, they were definitely hiding and doing just fine without any human interference. Here's the thing about medieval approach to disease. They didn't have TikTok wellness experts to guide them, so their solutions ranged from the slightly reasonable to the absolutely bonkers. When you've got physicians relying on miasma theory, linking disease to bad air rather than pathogens, seeking them out might feel akin to trying a viral TikTok hack without wading through the comments first. Honestly, herbs were padded and potions whispered over with as much promise as today's essential oils. If a remedy didn't work, it just hadn't been applied correctly enough. And so you'd try another random ingredient, because why not? Think of it like the medieval equivalent of deleting and reinstalling an app, hoping it'll magically fix itself. The townsfolk in their charming patchwork hats might recommend wearing amulets to ward off illness, or suggest treatments involving live frogs or chickens. You could spot Charles from across the cobbled street muttering a secret chant passed down generations, like mumbling password guesses to open a forgotten account. Desperate times called for desperate measures, or so they reasoned. But let's be real here. For all the potions and protection rituals, success rates were more like the odds of opening your fridge and expecting it to have restocked itself overnight, like a corner store genie had visited. Not high, in short. Attending the local healer felt more like participating in a live medieval BuzzFeed quiz. Which herbal remedy will cure your ailment? Find out now, than actual healthcare. As the blurry distinction between science and myth-colored daily life, Historians still argue over how much trust people really had in these treatments. Some suggest that faith in remedies was more a form of comfort, a placebo for the worried mind, a hug made of herbs, if you will. Others debate that maybe they genuinely believed in these miraculous cures more than was led on, a faith so deep it could bend reality. Imagine exploring these narrow streets of medical curiosities, each wrong turn leading you to another story, another trial and error, another flicker of hope. Sometimes, perusing these folk remedies can seem like modern folks binging on life hacks. We see, we wonder, and often chuckle, because putting toothpaste on a screen crack seems just as logical. But in those days, comfort was in the trying, the ritual, the shared belief that perhaps if we all hold on to our unicorn horns and mutter incantations, maybe, just maybe, something will keep us safe. As you traverse this herbal maze, it's like stepping into a library of forgotten practices. Curiosity settling, like the dust that drapes itself over the endless strings of dream catchers. With each toddling footstep, you carry the stories of trials, missteps, and sheer grit needed to face a world as uncertain as ours is now, if not more. What kept them going? Faith, tradition, and maybe a sprinkle of humor in the chaos isn't so different from what we clutch onto today. As this ancient sun dips beyond the horizon, the day promises to greet us with yet another narrative, another slice of this curious tale, unraveling like a dusty old tome. Walking further into the cobblestone labyrinth of medieval life, your journey leads you to an experience not unlike those days when you can't find your AirPods and realize you just don't want to talk to anyone. You're in desperate need of a day in a medieval physician's life. Picture this: a doctor dressed in an outfit that's half practical, half, what were they thinking? Yes, we're talking about those iconic plague doctor masks, the ones today's costume parties love, with that eerily long beak filled with aromatic herbs. That was their defense against the dreaded miasma, which they believed carried disease through bad air and odors. Trust me, trying to find logic in medieval medicine is like trying to find that one matching sock. Sometimes it simply doesn't exist. Walking through the bustling chaos of human life, you, as the plague doctor, carry not just a stick used to inspect patients without direct contact, which would have been like poking at fires, hoping they put themselves out. You're also metaphysically armed with a bucket of hope, because honestly, medicine had an awful track record at keeping people alive back then. Each sickbed visit might feel like an assignment at work you've put off until the night before it's due, knowing full well you're not ready. Quirky as it sounds, medieval doctors employed a mix of astrology and what they called humorism, aligning illnesses with the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, believing balance among them led to health. Catch this: the next time you're balancing your grocery list with your wallet, you're practically a humorist, a modern miracle worker with debit cards instead of leeches. As you traverse the crowded streets in your somewhat unnerving attire, every turn greets you with families who rely on your mysterious presence to conjure health from the abyss this pestilence created. Can you save him? A desperate mother asks on behalf of her feverish child. You nod, less out of certainty, more as reassurance, a silent promise that no matter what happens, you're there, performing your duties as best you can, even when that means sometimes just offering comfort in otherwise uncontrollable situations. For a moment, you stand still amidst the hustle and silently ask yourself, is this working at all? Historians still argue whether the efforts of doctors had any real impact on the disease's trajectory, or if their presence was more psychological, offering what little reprieve their methods might achieve. Your senses are overwhelmed, much like clicking through email notifications, only to forget which ones are genuinely important. Is that smell rosemary from the remedies, or despair lingering on these hallowed grounds? Every patient you attend to tells their own story of struggle, a melodrama of survival similar to the digital lives we peek into while aimlessly scrolling through our phones. The street swells with sounds, a mishmash of human voices seeking answers in an ocean of questions. Each alley echoes tales of attempts to capture fleeting moments of normalcy and hope gleaming softly like fairy lights in a quiet room. You realize this isn't much different from modern life, where sometimes it feels like we've got duct tape on our hopes, holding things together just so we can face another day. Even as the sun dips lower and the chilling winds remind you of the weight of your role, there's warmth in every thank you, and every clasped handshake that conveys a shared understanding of feeble humanity in an unforgiving world. And so, as you walk away from another home, the stars beginning to peek out and dot the night sky like speckles of glitter on midnight blue, you silently promise to return tomorrow, to bring comfort, however fleeting, however scarce, to those who look to you in these dire times. Each step echoes softly in the folds of the evening, trailing hope like a gentle whisper in the wind, a tender assurance that tomorrow brings another page, another story in this sprawling saga of survival. As you continue to wander through the tapestry of medieval life, let's take a little detour into the world of furry creatures, specifically cats and rats. Picture this. You're walking in the dim evening light, the cobblestones slick underfoot, and the street alive with the faint rustle of cloaks and whispers. It's a setting where cats and rats are embroiled in a story as peculiar as that one time you wore mismatched socks to a meeting and hoped nobody noticed. Right, so here's the deal. Back in the day, people were on the hunt, literally and figuratively, for something to blame for the plague. It was common to point the finger at rats, those shadowy little shapes darting in and out of corners. Rats, with their beady eyes and propensity to find homes where they absolutely shouldn't, were seen as the harbingers of doom, rather than merely the vehicles for the fleas that spread the plague. If only they could remove the rats like we do friends who ghost us. Poof, gone. Historians still debate whether the mass culling of cats, due to superstitions about them being witches' familiars, inadvertently contributed to the uptick in rat populations. Quite the plot twist, huh? It's like when you delete all your social apps to focus on work, only to find yourself downloading them again, because somehow the distraction seemed necessary. Strangely enough, it's as if the medieval population missed that episode where bad air and rat fleas starred as the real villains. Instead, some communities took out their fears on the rats' foes, the cats, thinning their own lines of defense. Picture them sitting there, questioning their life choices like we do, when figuring out why exactly there's an array of colorful socks we never seem to pair correctly. Walking past the houses with shuttered windows and latches drawn tight, you can almost hear the collective sigh from the feline corners, who simply wanted to handle their rodent business without being dragged into more witchcraft conspiracies. Meanwhile, the rats, wise little opportunists that they are, continued their behind-the-scene escapades, largely unhindered. Imagine this contemporary conundrum. There's a whole debate. Some say it's like arguing over the last slice of pizza at a party, on whether or not focusing on eliminating cats was a medieval blunder. Historians are left wondering, what if scenarios? Like, what if they hadn't ousted the cats? Pondering notoriously fickle medieval hygiene is like binging historical conspiracy Easter eggs. Endless possibilities over endless centuries. So, as you trudge on alongside the quaint, moonlit streams, spare a thought for those blamed and misunderstood animals who were just trying to go about their nightly business of patrolling rooftops. It's a story where challenges twist and resolve like threads in tapestry, never quite separating the yarns that form these curious chronicles. The night wears on, interspersed with soft, nocturnal melodies. A cricket chirp here, a whispered rustle of trees there. Who knew cats and rats could loom so significantly in the human affairs of yesteryear? Roaming through this moment in time is like staring down at your phone's 2% battery, a complex thread of missing pieces, where history holds mysteries as deep as any dark screen. And as the evening draws its hushed blanket tighter, these animals silently tiptoe into the shadows, blending back into the fabric of ancient myths and legends, waiting for their stories to be retold by curious souls like us. As the world slumbers, so too do these creatures curl into the night, leaving questions unanswered and stories lingering in the cobwebs of history. Let's wander onwards, shall we? Picture yourself drifting down a narrow path where the past meets the mystical fringe of medieval life. Imagine, if you will, a surreal parade, a swirling cavalcade of mortification and piety, where a group of devoted souls, known as flagellants, march with fervor and frenzy. It's like watching a flash mob you can't unsee. But there's distinctly more self-flagellation involved. These fervent believers roamed from town to town, lashing themselves with leather whips, hoping their intense displays of penance could somehow absorb the wrath of the divine and turn the plague's tide. They were like the influencers of their time, but instead of hawking trendy diets on Instagram, they spread a different kind of viral content, one where the engagement came in the form of public penance. Honestly, their dedication puts some of our attempts at setting daily exercise goals to shame. The sound of their chants echoes through the air, a hummed harmony of supplications vibrating like the low thrum of a quietly ticking clock. Every lash of the whip sings a bittersweet melody of atonement, an immersive experience that's as much spectacle as spiritual plea. Conceivably, it was their way of creating a ritualized catharsis, much like the modern satisfaction gleaned from popping some bubble wrap, in a far more intense fashion, of course. Now, as you're standing there, trying not to cringe as they pass, consider this. Historians still argue over whether the flagellants were a help or a hindrance. Did their processions reinforce a sense of collective suffering and redemption? Or did they inadvertently heighten anxiety and spread the plague further? Maybe it was a little of both, like trying skincare hacks that leave your face glowing, or just an unfortunate shade of medieval rouge. Above, the sky veils itself in hues of twilight, casting a somber backdrop to the procession weaving through the tangled streets. Can you almost hear their footsteps blending into the mulch of beaten earth? A rhythmic percussion that punctuates the air like a heartbeat? Street by street, they absorb the attention of the townsfolk like a moving sermon of self-inflicted salvation. For the onlookers, it's an event of grand proportions, a pause in the mundane cycle of daily chores. It's waking up to find out someone's left fresh-baked cookies at your doorstep, but you're unsure whether it's a neighborly kindness or a strange ploy. Regardless, the flagellants unfurl with a kind of feverish allure that can't be immediately turned away from. So, picture this. Headlines across medieval minds debating whether the flagellants offered the townsfolk new perspective, cautionary tales, or simply a carnival of contrition. In their wake, murmurations of judgment stir, lingering like an unfinished storyline. Was penitential pilgrimage a path to healing, or merely a theatrical gesture wrapped in unresolved narratives? Against this backdrop of humbling desperation, you sense a whisper, a realization that humanity cycles through phases of understanding and misunderstanding, like a playlist on shuffle. Despite their lashings and lamentations, as with anything hinged on faith and fervor, the impact of these acts remains as mysterious as a mist that lifts at dawn. And so, as the night creeps onward, enveloping the parade in darkness, you're left pondering the flagellant's passage through history's veins. With each strike falling into the dark like a soft mantra, echoes of their devotion linger as you trace your path homeward. The air warms with the familiar scent of hearths aglow, where stories softly weave themselves into the embrace of night, sighing out a lullaby that cradles an endlessly curious world. As we slip further into this nocturnal tapestry, let's delve into the attempts at isolation and containment, which medieval folks thought might outsmart the ever-looming plague. Imagine quarantine not as the sometimes cozy or sometimes cabin fever-inducing Netflix binge session we know today, but as a rudimentary attempt to grasp control over an invisible chaos. Picture walking into a bustling port city like Venice, around the time when quarantine efforts began. Here, they introduced something called 40 giorni, or 40 days, a period ships were required to anchor offshore before unloading, hoping to avoid bringing more of the illness onto land. It's the ancestor of keeping tabs on travelers through apps instead of relentless carrier pigeons. Feel the salty spray of the sea as sailors, eager to set foot on firm land again, paced their decks, likely staring longingly at the city skyline like us, gazing at the countdown on a microwave, willing it to cook faster. Quarantine back then might sound grand, but unofficially, it resembled something like a medieval waiting room, where hope drifted as freely as the gulls overhead. Thinking of their seafaring strategy gives rise to a light chuckle. What did they do to pass the time? Scroll through hand-scribbled notes? Use flag signals to send messages from ship to ship, akin to passing memes across the water? Whatever the case, each day spent aboard meant more routine and less restive minds, as if comfort, no matter how uncertain, was anchored in repetition. This effort at containment, however, faced its own set of controversies. Historians still puzzle over whether quarantines back in the day actually worked, or were just a medieval form of wishful thinking, a way to project the illusion of control into an equation dictated largely by luck and fate. Did these 40 giorni save lives or merely delay the inevitable? Like hitting snooze on your alarm multiple times, hoping the extra minutes help you avoid facing the harsh light of reality. Beneath the layered complexity of life resting on the horizon, a quiet determination lingers. Did the sailors aboard those sandy-stained vessels converse about the future or the foibles of fate? Perhaps they shared tales of travels known and loved, recounting them like a comforting childhood story oft repeated. Meanwhile, on land, the people practiced their own versions of termless isolation, towns closing in on themselves, gates locked and bridges drawn, to keep what they could secure safe within winding stone walls. Despite their best efforts, however, the disease sometimes slipped through the cracks like an errant breeze, unpredictable and elusive. Back then, families sat beside candlelit tables, whispering wonders and worries, while attempting to locate specks of normalcy in the sea of change roiling around them. In guarded homes, quiet confessions might have grown among trusted circles, musing on questions. Is this necessary? Is it enough? Much like us, wondering if that machine blinking low battery can survive another swipe through reels before dying in the night. Deep within this unfolding narrative, as halos of lamplight stretch across stone floors and night whispers coil around busy ports, remnants of those Quaranta Giorni are etched into the human timeline. Each droplet of history, each tale left unfurled like parchment, adds to the layers of story, reminding us of our journey's shared nature. With the sea lapping like a giant's heartbeat against the waiting ships, these maritime gestures of tentative triumph become forgotten echoes in time, a soothing reminder of paths once traveled, of stories once spoken. And as the night deepens, the soft hum of unanswered questions fills the quiet, like an old lullaby cradling a timeless memory into gentle repose. As the quiet night presses softly upon the wandering world, let's unravel the tale of how fear, desperation, and downright paranoia sometimes led medieval folks onto the shadowy path of witch hunts. Imagine, for a moment, seeing your village community not as the knit-together tapestry of neighbors swapping bread or stories, but as something unraveling into suspicion and finger-pointing. During times when the plague's grasp seemed inescapable and unexplained, the blame game took on tragic proportions. People in towns started clutching at straws, attempting to rationalize the onslaught of death. Naturally, the question became, who to blame? Think of suspicious looks exchanged like emails with too many exclamation points, each trying to emphasize urgency laced with a strong undercurrent of confusion. Amid the chaos, some folks believed the pestilence to be the result of dark magic, cinching guilt onto women they labeled as witches. These unfortunate souls were often just herbalists or widows living at the edges of society, misunderstood and misinterpreted, much like how a ghosted text conversation leaves you endlessly speculating. If you think leaving group chats on mute to avoid misunderstandings is an art, these misunderstandings were positively medieval masterpieces. Communities were so swept away by fear that they didn't necessarily bother to fact-check accusations of witchcraft, swayed by the pervasive panic. It was like a particularly anger-fueled game of telephone, the narrative getting more distorted with each retelling, resulting in what became an intense fervor played out on the public stage. Historians still argue over the extent to which fear of the plague influenced witch hunts during these times. Did these events occur purely due to disease-induced mania? Or was this blame more deeply rooted in societal tensions? Much like puzzling over the domino effect of a poorly timed tweet causing market mayhem, this remains a tangled web of intrigue. You can almost hear the whispers spreading from mouth to ear, a murmur of conspiracies like crickets echoing through a sweltering summer night. Imagine growing up, believing that there are forces unseen stitching havoc into your daily quilt, blaming neighbor Jane for the foul air lingering just because she has a knack for growing lavender that's somehow just a little too lush. Meanwhile, outside the thatched cottages and across the village square, these accusations often culminated in public trials, a tragic theater of human misjudgment where unfortunate tales were spun. leaving strands of compassion inexplicably unwoven. These were days filled not with hashtags of solidarity, but judgments delivered swift and final, as if such scapegoating could stem the tide of illness. The evening air now feels heavy with silent reckonings as secrets slip off into the cool embrace of night, leaving thoughts to wander through cobbled streets, lonely and unresolved. Each step, murmurs of fates long past, echoes reverberating along somber paths where history itself seems to navigate between truth and myth. And so, as shadows weave tales under the watchful lull of stars, the witch hunts etch themselves darkly into the annals of memory. This somber saga gallops away like a spectral rider into the night, the rustle of cloaks unfurling in the breeze, a soft reminder like the gentle sway of a creaking swing on a breezy afternoon as we question these fateful encounters forged by history. In the quiet, let these tales simmer, a curious blend of intrigue and revelation, waiting like untold stories woven into the very fabric of time, tugging softly at those who lend an ear, pondering these echoes of noise long past. Let's embark on the next leg of our medieval journey, shall we? Imagine yourself strolling through a village where the kind of art you encounter is not just a feast for the eyes, but a window into the collective soul, grappling with the harsh realities of the plague. When faced with such an overwhelming force, the human spirit often turns to creativity for solace or sanity, much like your penchant for doodling during a seemingly endless Zoom call. Medieval art during the plague was awash with vivid depictions of life and death, each stroke of paint or chisel a desperate attempt to explain or memorialize a world turned upside down. Take a deep breath and let your senses be immersed in the frescoes, manuscripts, and haunting allegories of the dance of death. A whimsical yet somber portrayal of how death was omnipresent, grabbing dancers from all walks of life and twirling them gleefully into the afterlife. It's like flipping through an Instagram reel, where even Fido isn't safe from the choreography of sorrow and inevitability. Even amid despair, there's an undeniable humor woven through these artworks, a gallows humor, if you will, which serves as a reminder that even when everything else seems to crumble, a wry smile somehow endures. Think of it as including a LOL at the end of a text that's anything but funny, an attempt to soften the sting of reality. Every visit to a chapel paints a narrative that is loud in its silence, images that echo tales of macabre dances and celestial deliverance. You wander down dimly lit aisles, flickering candlelight casting shadows that appear to waltz along with skeletal figures adorning the walls. Here, each mural becomes a conversation, whispering warnings and lamentations to the softened ears of those seeking solace. Now, modern scholars still debate the extent to which these artworks serve didactic purposes versus being pure expressions of creativity. Were they meant to scare the piety sense into people, reminding them of life's fleeting nature? Or were they simply a journal of emotions, a coping mechanism for communities wanting to navigate their grief? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine these communities gathering in muted reverence before these sinister yet satirical pieces, interpreting them for meaning and savoring shared stories. It was a tradition, a cultural discourse, a time capsule preserved in colors both faded and vibrant, bridging the gap between anxiety and acceptance. Like loading objectives into games, gaining insight from these pieces wasn't a hurried sprint, but a measured walk. As the artwork lingers in the backdrop of your mind, have you ever thought about how modern times are, in their own way, reflected in pixelated posts and digital canvases? Much like how artwork back then echoed the collective consciousness of the time, today's social media feeds capture fluctuating moods, ambitions, fears, and triumphs in a seamless scroll. Under the dim glow of a waning moon, you wander past easels of painted narratives, each silent stroke inscribing whispers of those who bore witness. The village night deepens, a tapestry woven with tales told beyond parchment and ink, inviting curious souls to probe whispers of mortality through melancholy hues. As your day winds down, enveloped by time-weathered art and distant choruses, remember the urgency of creativity woven through history's loom. It rests not solely in the past, but is ever vibrant and ready to infuse our present. When dawn sweeps the horizon in a gentle embrace, remember these rhythms of color, dancing delicately against the edges of history. For within them rests the timeless hand of art, forever echoing across the night. As the tapestry of night stretches overhead, your steps take you along quieter paths towards the elusive standard of public cleanliness, or lack thereof, in medieval times. Imagine this: the air constantly infused with an amalgamation of odors ranging from farm wafts to the less than sweet scent of crowded human habitats. If you've ever opened a fridge expecting a particular smell, only to be greeted by a forgotten casserole gone rogue, you're halfway there on the smellometer. The reality of town life meant that people relied on rivers not just as scenic views, but as veritable waste channels. The concept of separation between potable and unpotable water wasn't quite there yet. More of a disclaimer than a rule, if you will. With each ripple in the water, a fresh testament to the long-neglected communal understanding of cleanliness travels swiftly downstream. Curious, isn't it? How hygiene didn't exactly top the medieval to-do list. That wasn't all jubilation, let me tell you. For instance, communal bathhouses were common, yet they'd probably make germaphobes today recoil in horror faster than instantly regretting clicking on that dubious email link. During a time when noble finery masked lingering smells like your gym socks hiding under your bed, out of sight and out of olfactory assault range, everyone made do with what they had. Tiny streams flush with fragrances, both natural and man-made traipse through cobbled streets, where knowledge of germs existed only in the whispered folklore of bad air. These whispered myths mingled with fireside tales, keeping the spooky and fantastical company in the annals of memory. Yet, there remained moments of practicality snatched from the air, where every household held firm to the idea that open windows and sweeping could ward the profession of plague. Historians still argue about how aware medieval people were of the benefits of cleanliness. Were folks genuinely oblivious to the links between filth and disease, or did they merely lack the means to implement effective cleaning measures? Either way, the very idea is like watching cooking shows while tucking into a meal of takeout noodles, knowing the theory, but lacking the enthusiasm to execute. As you wander through these back streets, cast your gaze toward the bemused expressions on statues who have seen countless generations come to terms, often belatedly, with better hygiene practices. For townsfolk, their day-to-day existence was woven together with threads of pragmatism and superstition. Simple acts, like sprinkling herbs or scattering flower petals, thought to combat odor with the mystical force of pure optimism. Now, close your eyes briefly and let nostalgia cradle your thoughts. When you crack open the fridge for the umpteenth time, hoping a snack will have magically appeared, picture those medieval villages doing the same with their less than clean realities, hoping each glance might provide a new perspective and perhaps a little bit of magic wisdom. As silver moonbeams dance across the cobbles, you might pause to wonder at the resilience of humanity, muddling through with humor in the face of challenge. The stories of yesterday's cleanliness, or lack thereof, glide along on the same winged current that ferries your thoughts between lands and eras, asking questions of old while intertwining them with modern musings. And in that tranquil night air, as blurry stars blink gently overhead, the song of history continues its unending chorus. Each note, a shimmering echo, nurtures a soothing lull among the hum of crickets, crafting an intimate melody both timeless and grounding, reminding us of where we've been, and the imaginative places we might yet glide toward in our dreams. As twilight wraps the world in a warm embrace, perhaps a fitting time to dip into the realm where spiritual rituals interwove with everyday medieval life. Picture yourself stepping into a hushed cathedral where every echoing whisper reverberates with ancient chants and flickering candlelight dances like tiny fire spirits. It's a scene that makes you feel like you're cloaked in one of those weighted blankets, comforting, yet imbued with a touch of heaviness. During these plague-stricken times, the quest for divine intervention was not just popular, it was virtually mandatory. Folks didn't have guided meditation apps. Instead, they attended services where incense smoke curled like wispy dreams into the rafters. Every person in attendance hoped for the redemption of their souls, as well as a miraculous lifting of the pestilence gripping their world. Peeking over the shoulders of quiet congregations, you spot the devotion in each bowed head. These ceremonies were meant to atone, plead, and promise, a bit like constantly refreshing an email inbox, waiting for an answer that never quite comes. The faithful believed they might somehow appease divine forces into granting mercy, believing their universes could be recalibrated with fervent sacrifice and submission. Now, consider this. A quirky belief many carried was that their prayers alone weren't enough. Sometimes, elaborate processionals had to happen, barefoot and dragging along all manner of relics. Imagine carrying a saint's toe or sliver of ancient wood, like holding on to a lucky charm that surely had to possess some mystical power. It's that "I need this to succeed" mentality, akin to setting 5 alarms only to ignore the first 4. Historians delve deeply into ornate manuscripts and meticulously copied religious texts, still pondering whether these rites were primarily communal grief rituals or genuinely nurtured supernatural hopes. Were they built on the idea of molding spiritual connective tissue, or did practice simply offer solace and solidarity, much like a favorite podcast might today? In these spaces, where stone meets the mud of the earth floor, you catch glimpses of people squeezing time for silent prayers, lifted skyward alongside curling incense addressed to saints. Their footsteps echo in rhythm with heartbeats, intertwining with thoughtful exploration amidst swirling tides of uncertainty. See, here's a beautiful paradox. The more they sought specific outcomes, the less tangible their results appeared. Yet, like eager children at the edge of a bedtime story, wistful anticipation hung thick as mist and lingered long after the evening candle wicks extinguished. Amidst hymns echoing through corridors adorned with intricate carvings in stained glass windows, about as close to a Netflix original series as the Middle Ages got, faith itself became art. Frames woven with hallelujahs and heartfelt confessions, wrapped tenderly around people seeking meaning. And so, as you venture forth into this quiet nightscape. The solemn melody plays on, lulling sleep. Beyond sermons and shrines, soft rhythms whisper, guiding you across centuries shared with storytellers and seekers. It's an endless lullaby, serenading weary souls, restful slumber as the midnight hour ticks by. Each tiny echo whispers mysteries of tomorrow, speaks promises carried from yesterday, gentle notes drifting through time, an unceasing harmony forged between silence and dreams. Curious, compelling, a cohesive testament, entangling threads of hope among humanity's spirit, stitching it snug against the vastness of eternity. As you meander through the shadowy paths of history, let's stumble into the peculiar territory of medieval healthcare, where moments of actual discovery mingled with a comically vast sea of missteps. Imagine yourself walking into a room filled with physicians huddled over scrolls, discussing treatments with the air of ancient philosophers, but the success rate of a squirrel trying to cross a freeway. Delve into the nostalgia of their study, a place resembling an old library where dust dances like fairies caught in lamplight. Physicians relied on texts laden with the wisdom of Hippocrates and Galen, alongside a mystical smattering of herbal remedies harvested from the local hedges. It's akin to firing up WebMD and finding yourself face to face with a barrage of quite alarming diagnoses when all you had was an innocuous sneeze. Medieval medicine revolved around balancing humors, a practice that at least bore some resemblance to modern balanced diets, albeit with a strange reliance on bloodletting. Picture a physician scrutinizing your pallor with the intensity of someone guessing your coffee order solely based on the bags under your eyes. Their solution: leeching or bleeding, which folks sincerely hoped might coax those pesky humors back into alignment. Talk about a bloody outlook. Now, here's something quirktastic. Despite mundane inadequacies, some ancient treatments indirectly had merit. Take garlic, for example, used liberally for all manners of ailments, which happens to genuinely possess antiseptic properties. Historians occasionally marvel at whether these were happy accidents, or if medieval folks possessed an intuition waiting centuries to earn scientific backing. Was trial and error profound discovery, or merely serendipity dressed as knowledge? Slipping further into this whimsical weaving of science and superstition, consider the curious case of warding off disease by burning aromatic herbs, a practice that does indeed usher clean air, reminding us of today's penchant for salt lamps and essential oils to purify spaces. Aren't we still drawn to habits that comfort, amuse, and promise a semblance of control in a sprawling universe? Against the ethereal backdrop, physicians scrambled like mad scientists, plotting influences of planetary alignments and lunar phases against illness, grasping at cosmic straws to illuminate their paths. Eyes pore over the night sky, just like many a sleepless night sprawled beneath Google's vast expanse, hoping to define and own knowledge in boxes. You stroll through candle-lit hallways, possibly echoing with more questions than answers, reflecting on that fine line between discovery and delightful error. Amidst the skepticism, one wonders, did their nightly laments yield glimmers of wisdom, inspiring even? Imagine if they had TikTok, misconstruing every herbal concoction into dance challenges, blending health advice with rhythmic feet tapping, the incarnation of levity blended with conjecture. As day melts into ink-dark night, ponder ghostly whispers residing unwavering in the corridors. Is it ambition blending seamlessly with sentiment? Or is there a comforting irony nestled within human endeavor? Perhaps therein lies the charm of history. Airy tales layered widely across parchment kurta and heart like gently falling petals or cool wood gardens. Here, tales of ancient healthcare are feathery songs sung low beneath fading candle flame, inviting eyes, yours, to follow narratives across haunting bridge tales, linking erst with known and unknown, threading future along time's invariability, unbroken by humanity's seeking pulse. And there, a gentle breath brushes your cheek, guiding your dreams as chiming night wraps itself into soft-spoken repose, beckoning ever onward to wander further yet again. As the velvety layers of night continue to wrap snugly around you, let's drift into a realm haunted by whispers of sorrow and resilience. Fields strewn with remnants of plague pits and strange burials. Imagine a place where the ground holds stories woven deeply within its rich soil. Each plot a silent testament to the hushed chaos that simmered beneath the medieval surface. You find yourself standing on soft earth under a sky quilted with stars, feeling the cool breeze brush softly against your skin, reminiscent of passing spirits. The fields stretch out like an elaborate landscape painting, one that holds an uncomfortable beauty, beautiful not in its morbidity, but in its solemn recognition of life and death realities. The idea of plague pits might sound rather grim, but in truth, they were born out of sheer necessity, an effort to manage deaths that came too quickly and in too great number to accommodate individual burials. Picture the priests, robed in their garb of subtle authority, blessing vast trenches cut into the earth, a savior's embrace for those beyond mortal aid. Is it strange to wonder if such somber ceremonies felt watery yet inadequate, like offering a carefully worded apology text that doesn't quite capture the weight of what went wrong? Indeed, while whispers of grief lingered heavier than the scent of autumn leaves silently falling, urgency dictated mass burials, often hurried without fanfare, tears quietly consumed by the hidden folds of humanity struggling to reconcile with loss. Meanwhile, in today's world, we might order fast food, despite just having bought groceries. A humorous nod to the human tendency to do what feels immediately right in the moment, often with unpredictable choices. Curiously, historians still ponder over the significance of these burial practices. Were they as organized as accounts suggest, or did desperation breed chaotic landscapes of lost souls? Like grappling with speculative layers of forgotten tales, the truth may reside in an interstice between honor and heartbreak. As your feet brush against the damp moss cushioning gravestones, who could have foreseen simple earthen mounds as indelible marks on humanity's canvas, surfaces inscribed with untold chronicles of courage? Therein lies intersectionality with art, a fragrance hovering just beyond sleepless nights, binding storylines in retrospect between dust and starlight. Imagine now, within the tender embrace of this midnight, wandering among resting places shadowed by uncertain times, a solar eclipse reflected through trees, a recollection of prayers imperfectly spoken, waiting for your breath to rise and mingle with the phantom mist. Each footfall carries you deeper into history's embrace, igniting whispers of familiarity, softly sung by invisible choristers blending into night. You may find yourself wondering, did mourners glance back as they left their loved ones behind, turning hearts towards hope over horizons fertile with promise? Like pondering a browser tab, left suspended mid-thought, eternally bookmarked yet untouched, every delicate detail serves as a reminder, an intentional interruption, softly leaning into dreams, trundling on lonely branches curtained by raindrops of slumber. Thus, as the moonlit garden sways below towering junipers, let these ancient echoes become the gentle lullaby inviting rest, wrapped snug amid the twilight woven like gossamer threads, weaving even now around you, a gentle assurance that history lives, past not unwritten, merely waiting to dance in tranquil respite. And so, the night rolls on, a cradle for dreams unwound softly as a whisper, stretching through that eternal tomorrow, patiently awaiting your arrival in a new dawn. As the night weaves its timeless magic, drawing you deeper into the gentle embrace of history, let us tread into the realm of medical breakthroughs and belated realizations nestled amongst medieval shadows. Picture yourself in a dimly lit chamber, filled with an alchemist's tantalizing aroma, part mystery, part revelation. Like those days when the morning air feels laced with a fresh idea peeking just beyond the horizon. The medieval world may lack the precision of today's medical textbooks, yet it was far from devoid of discovery. Within their leather-bound tomes lay hints of knowledge acquired through relentless trial and error, sometimes bridging the gap between conjecture and genius. It's akin to stumbling upon your old high school notes and realizing that amid the doodles, there was a kernel of wisdom that you somehow missed in your youthful impatience. Take, for example, the practice of trepanation, carving small holes into the skull to relieve pressure, an ancient technique that, surprisingly, helped with certain ailments. While not exactly what you'd consider a convenient spa treatment, it was grounded enough in reality to have survived across centuries. Then there's the intriguing use of moldy bread to treat infections. Though they didn't quite grasp the connective tissue between mold and modern-day penicillin, they were inadvertently onto something. Historians examine these cross degrees of understanding and wonder. Did they attribute success to divine intervention? Or was it a gradual revelation that nudged humanity forward, similar to us, marveling at tech updates that neither solve our existential crises nor crash our systems? Imagine standing beside medieval healers as they concocted remedies, snippets of wisdom and curiosity interweaving with esoteric chants. The blending of philosophy and alchemy shaped the social fabric, a tapestry inspired by both natural phenomena and spiritual metaphors. It's like crafting an elaborate patchwork echoing humanity's tumble through time, fueled by both certainty and the unknown. It raises an eternal question. Were these breakthroughs purely accidental footnotes tucked away in margins, or eagerly pursued as genuine paths of discovery? Much like sifting through layers of 1,000 open browser tabs, where elusive insights often hide in plain sight amid the chaos of curiosity. As you wander through this labyrinth of medieval insight, entwined with herbal aroma and soft echoes of whispered invocations, embrace the allure of mystery. The lessons from yesteryears reveal that even the smallest revelations possess the power to unleash change, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinariness of human achievement. The passage of time moves languidly with every exhaled breath until you sense the arresting truth buried within these chronicles. It's akin to sifting through handwritten postcards in a bookstore's bargain bin, discovering stories woven from fragments, nostalgic moments where discovery hatches delicately beneath gilded intentions. So, as history's fingers brush lightly against your awakening senses, let these musings accompany you as a lantern illuminating the pursuit of knowledge and wonderment. A reminder, touched by forgotten whispers, that none of us truly walk life's path alone, nor closely crafted in isolation. We are, after all, part of the same continuum, an infinite scroll awaiting to unveil its future grandeur in the quiet space beyond midnight. Here, in the sanctuary of sleep, the tales remain, softly spun by a universe intimately coaxed from forgotten shadows. Each unspoken verse, woven tenderly, awaits revelation amidst perpetual starlight, ready for the embrace of the dreams yet to come. Like stars, nestled tenderly within a hidden sky, waiting to grant upon tomorrow a gleam of breaking dawn, gently cloaked in history's delicate flourish. As the night deepens and the edges of reality begin to blur, let us gently meander into the penultimate chapters of this tale, where the waves of panic clashed with whispers of reform, and amidst the tumult, some seeds of change took root in the medieval world. Imagine, if you will, a bustling market square at the break of day, where fear and opportunity weave together like threads in an ancient tapestry. The aftermath of the plague left no corner of life untouched, and with a sense of urgency, people began to examine the old ways with fresh eyes, a realization dawning, much like when you decide to finally tackle that cluttered closet and discover hidden treasures among forgotten relics. The Black Death, as cataclysmic as it was, compelled communities to rethink public health, labor practices, and social structures, inadvertently laying foundations for the modern world. Picture it, outlawing the haphazard dumping of waste on streets due to newfound revelations, much like a clean your room mandate, but for the entire city. While this wasn't revolutionary by current standards, it was the medieval equivalent of watching a satisfying cleaning video, inspiring them to perhaps strive for slightly cleaner surroundings. Across Europe, panic slowly simmered down into solutions, showcasing humanity's innate resilience. Villages took tentative steps towards introducing measures, rudimentary though they were, to stymie the spread of disease. As travelers ventured between towns, their movements were scrutinized and somewhat restricted. It was, in essence, the medieval version of passport control, albeit with significantly less bureaucracy and more suspicious glances. As labor shortages loomed large, the remaining workforce found itself with a surprising bit of leverage. Peasants, who once toiled for mere scraps, began to seize opportunities to demand fairer wages. It's like those moments when the co-worker who frequently gets overlooked finally receives the recognition they deserve. This unexpected shift in labor dynamics helped usher in the decline of the feudal system, an era slowly fading like an unsaved document on an outdated computer. Historians still debate the extent of the Black Death's influence on these reforms. Were they inevitable changes, or did the plague hasten the onset of what would become a series of cascading transformations for Europe? Much like analyzing the ripples created by a single pebble in a pond, the full scope remains perpetually elusive. As the sun sets on these quieter moments of reform, consider how night falls like a gentle reminder, coaxing all into introspection. Tomorrow, after all, waits patiently on the horizon with stories untold as lapse time invites growth and understanding. And so, as you step quietly through this garden of history, cherish the peace and reflection carried within each moment's breath. The art of reform, after all, resembles our attempts to refine ourselves, a ceaseless endeavor wrapped in layers spanning generations. These ancient acts of change echo like a silent choir, through the depths of the night, casting gentle musings upon soul and spirit before they melt away into dawn. Here, amid the hewn branches cradling time's tales, the seeds of history bloom softly, infinitesimal whispers of ages past, reminding us that it is in gentle moments that transformation takes hold, sketching tomorrow's canvas from the whispering echoes of yesteryear. And in the dim light, without haste or want, our imaginations drift, ready to be wrapped tenderly within the lullabies of dreams yet unfurling. As the night wraps you in its comfortable embrace, we find ourselves arriving at the final gentle chapter of our journey through medieval times, a moment to pause and reflect on the quiet beauty found within history's breadth. Picture yourself once more within the confines of a sleepy village, where moonlight dapples across cobblestone streets, and the echoes of those who walked before us linger softly in the air. In this serene solitude, you might reflect on the quiet resilience of those who faced the gnashing jaws of the plague with an endurance that transcends generations. Their stories are softly etched into the walls of time, whispered through the branches of ancient trees that stand sentinel over the village. The same trees that have witnessed epochs pass in quiet, dignified splendor. As we drift into reflections, there's a quiet understanding that emerges, a realization that for every peril and hardship humanity faced, there also laid the foundational strength to rebuild, reimagine, and reforge. It's not unlike our own modern quests, closing numerous browser tabs late at night in hopes of crafting a newer, clearer focus come dawn. These stories remind us of the human spirit that runs deep and omnipresent, an unyielding thread intertwining our experiences, beliefs, and dreams. Just as medieval peoples faced uncertainties, chaos, and change, we too navigate our own labyrinthine paths, seeking solace in shared stories, laughter, and occasional missteps. Perhaps what carries us forward is the understanding and empathy that blooms when we look at history from a lens of compassion. The knowledge that beneath the layers of time, the echoes of long-lost days sing the same tune we find ourselves humming today, a melody of hope, learning, and gentle continuance. Here in the snug embrace of night, as stars waltz lazily across the vast expanse, let yourself be comforted by the notion that each chapter we've traversed echoes a lullaby, a reminder to cherish where we've come from and where we aspire to go. So, as the warmth of this tale lingers softly around you, let your thoughts drift gently like the leaves on an autumn breeze, carrying tender whispers from ages past. Nestle into the coziness of knowing history endlessly unfolds, like the slow unwinding of your favorite yarn, colorful and vibrant. As we close this book of Centuries Walked, rest easy, knowing these stories are always here to guide us. Breathe deeply now. Sink into the tranquility that only night provides. Let its gentle arms cradle your thoughts as dreams weave themselves tenderly into your slumber. With the softest of sighs, you'll float these beginnings of nocturnal wonder towards dawn's shimmering promise. Rest, dear listener. Let the quiescence of night bridge your journey to the inevitability of a new day, a canvas yet to be painted with the stories of another tomorrow. May the wisdom, quirks, and echoes of yesterday's world keep you company, soothingly whispering until the first glow of morning lightly kisses your eyelids awake.